Ms. Messer?
Okay, great, thank you. So just to remind everybody of the purpose of today's presentation, what we'd like to do is we're going to run through very quickly the final draft Delta plan, the recirculated volume of the draft EIR, and the draft rulemaking package, just to give you some key information and a bit of an overview on those. And who I have up here at the table with me today, I'd like to introduce everyone. To my immediate right here, I have Steve Hatchett. He is from our consulting team. He, along with his colleague Lucas Baer, have been the leads for preparing the rulemaking package, working with council staff. Next to him, we have Ellen Garber, who is from our legal team. She has been one of the leads on preparing the draft EIR. And next to her is Gwen Buchholz, which you are all familiar with. Gwen's been up here many times, again from our consulting team and a lead for developing the draft EIR. So what I'll do is I'm just going to say a few quick follow-up remarks on the final draft Delta plan. And then I'm going to shoot it over to Ellen and Gwen to cover the draft EIR, the recirculated volume, and then Steve will follow up the rulemaking package. So just to follow up on Mr. Knopp's comments, a couple of things I just want to reiterate. As we all know, I haven't spent the last 2+ years working on this Delta plan, about half of that time. And we, as staff, are very excited. We see the process evolving. We see it coming almost full circle. We see a plan that, once it is finalized and adopted by this council, is going to do a series of very significant things. We wrote about this in our press release, and I just want to go ahead and reiterate those very quickly because they're very powerful messages regarding what this plan will do. And when the plan is adopted and we begin implementing the plan, what it's going to do is create a single blueprint for state and local agencies and their actions in the Delta that will implement this Delta plan and that will help achieve the co-equal goals. What the plan and its regulations will also do is it will be a series of new rules that apply to significant activities that state and local agencies undertake in the Delta, with this council serving as an appellate body to help enforce those new regulations, both in a fair and a timely manner. This plan will also create a single science initiative through the Delta Science Plan to coordinate these activities in the Delta and to improve accountability of the projects and the actions undertaken in this region. And then lastly, through this plan, through the legislation that created the need for this plan and the directive, we will have a single coordinated interagency entity that will bring together the activities and the actions in the Delta through the implementation committee to implement this plan. So again, just reiterating what was in the press release, but these again are very powerful messages about what the plan will do. I wanted to throw out some numbers. I think this attests to all of the hard work that this council, that the staff, the consultants, our stakeholders, the time, the effort we've spent in the last 2 years working and developing this plan. These are some numbers that our communication team put together, and I think they just attest to the dedication that is behind this product. So since April of 2010, when you had your first council meeting, we have spent 60 days of formal council meeting time discussing either the draft plan, receiving background information that went into decision making in developing this plan, and the draft EIR, and more recently the rulemaking package. We have had 7 individual workshops in the 2010-2011 time period that focused on Delta Plan policies, on subject matter areas such as finance. And these workshops were dedicated to, again, clarifying information, receiving input that's reflected in this final draft plan. We have had 172 comment days for the first 6 drafts of the Delta Plan. And we have had 341 total formal comment days on the first 6 drafts of this Delta Plan, as well as the draft EIR. And then lastly, I just wanted to offer that we have received more than 10,000 comments on the draft plans as well as the draft EIR that we as staff at least feel have been, many of those have been reflected in the changes from the first draft Delta Plan to the 5th, and then from the 5th to this final version. So, again.
Are the 10,000 comments from different institutions, entities, or people?
Yes. No.
So nobody has submitted more than one comment.
Oh,
That's
from many.
What is the answer?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't quite catch.
10,000 comments were delivered by how many groups and institutions or individuals is what I'm interested in. Because I know, as a matter of fact, that many people have repeatedly made submissions in writing and provided comments at meetings.
And I used to know that answer.
Well,
I don't off the top of my head, but I can certainly.
I strongly. My
back
recommendation is that summary be maintained as an ongoing matter, both in terms of verbal presentation and written presentation. I think Ms. Buchholz had actually done, for the 5th or I can't remember when, a summary of organizations and individuals who had submitted written comments. And I don't know if we've kept it up since, but if not, we should, and it ought to be part of the formal record.
Okay. And we did provide that, yes, back in about the March time frame.
And I recall from some earlier report that those 10,000 comments came from roughly 250 groups, organizations, and individuals, depending on how you count. We received a couple of electronic chain letters from groups and organizations. 3,000 individuals of an environmental group sent an email saying the same thing. Ms. Buchholz, what's mine?
It's not quite that much.
Okay.
But it is, including the individuals that used, that participated with the several similar letters. I don't know if I want to call them form letters because people did make changes. And so there was about 550 total different individuals, agencies, and entities that have commented on both the Delta Plan and the Delta Plan EIR.
Okay, so that was essentially what I was going to report out on the final draft Delta Plan. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. Otherwise, I might move it over to Ellen and to Gwen to go over the draft.
Okay. Ms. Gray.
I think, yes.
The 7th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think we had a combination of workshops, work sessions. We had some different terminology.
All right.
Okay.
Ms. Garber.
Yes.
Just a quick overview type comment about what we're doing here again today.
Push the red button.
Is that on now?
Try it.
Okay. Just an overview comment about the purpose of today's presentation, and I think Cindy touched upon this is an overview presentation, and what we're going to talk about are, in general, the basic components or pieces of the various documents that are out for review now. And the purpose of the meeting here is not to get into an in-depth discussion of the substance of the documents. As you know, we'll touch upon this again, but we're now in the midst of the legal 45-day public comment periods on both the CEQA side and the rulemaking side. And similarly, what I'd request from our fabulous stakeholders and members of the public, when they comment, if they comment on this item at this meeting, that we focus in on the process, the overall structure of what we're doing. We'll wrap it up at the end about the steps that we need to take after this meeting to get you, Council, to a place where you can actually vote and adopt your plan.
You don't want the council screwing it up with questions that imply we're making a change in the process when we've just gone out for public comments, and you want us to reserve our review, conclusions, suggestions, comments until after the comment period comes in and we've analyzed the comments.
Absolutely. And as for public comment, we'll touch upon that again when the various speakers speak to the CEQA process and the rulemaking process. There are avenues for receiving public comment that most of the stakeholders are aware of, as well as the fact that once the public comment period closes in the rulemaking process, we as a council will hold a specific rulemaking hearing at which we will have certified reporter here taking detailed transcripts. So at this meeting, we don't have a court reporter, and we're asking that members of the public
Understand that.
Yeah, address process, and we'll talk about that a little.
Should we, Mr. Stevens, require you to wear a robe and a wig during the stages of our proceeding where the law is
A wig?
preeminent to come?
Oh,
well,
boy.
I'm
Okay.
Mr. Natoli.
Yeah, I have a process question, and it relates because, and I think both Chris and Cindy have touched on it in their comments, or have actually elaborated on, the amount of time that's been devoted to preparation of the plan, the amount of hearings and hours and so forth, and yet there have been already some letters received requesting an extension of time on the comment period. What I want to ask about process is that after today, the next time this body convenes is in late January, at least 10 days after the comment period as is currently set, both on the rulemaking as well as on the current drafts, both the environmental document and the plan. And my question is then, the authority to extend the comment period is vested only with the council or with the executive officer? Can it be made at the staff decision? And if so, I just want to be clear, because those requests have come in. There may not be stomach for it or interest in going beyond the 45 days for all the reasons that have been cited. I recognize that, but I certainly don't want to just let today go by and then, oh, sorry, too late, because the council didn't even have a conversation about it. We don't have the authority to do any extension. So I want to be clear about what the process is, Chris, about that.
Yeah, well, that decision rests with you,
Okay.
Whether or not you want to extend the comment period. And let's talk about that with your permission after we hear a bit about what the recirculated document contains, what its purpose is, why we did it in the first place. And then let's address that, because we have had letters from stakeholders, and it's an important part of the process. And I don't want anybody to feel like, the staff has made a decision on its own. That's your decision, and let's revisit it in a few minutes.
And that's fine. Again, because if we did talk about it today and we left here, then any chance of even considering that passes before we next convene. Okay, thanks.